LivesthroughFriends happened in 2008 when an ex-colleague of mine and I got together after I'd retired for a couple of years because people kept asking for help. My history was moving about 25, 30 years ago. It might even be longer than that now. During the 80s, my day-to-day experience was of closing long-stay institutions, the old, what were called mental handicap hospitals. And I found myself at the end of the 80s approached by the National Development Team when it was part of the Department of Health because of the scandal at Borough Court and the Silent Minority programme on ITV. And I was part of the team then that did the inquiry for the Secretary of State and eventually probably was a major contributor to the report that was published. And then, being naive as I was asked to actually implement the report. In that process, the part of the report that we had put to the Secretary of State recommended that there's no way that the existing system, which was run by the NHS, was going to take apart the, if you like, the institutional norms that existed. And so we basically, and I think with some problems now, recommended that the responsibility should transfer to local authorities. That was incorporated into the 1991 NHS and Community Care Act and happened, but it coincided with us having to implement the closure of Borough Court and its associated bits and pieces, and led to inevitably a power interregnum, and we had to set up an independent organisation in order to do that commissioning job. In due course, we discovered that there were a very large number, it was over 100, it was 108 in total in terms of the records we kept. There were about 108 people who'd been so severely abused that they were very, very hard to live with. And we recognised at that point that there wasn't a service anywhere that was actually providing adequately for those people. And so for the next 15 years or so, the organisation changed from being a commissioning agency into a provider agency or an interim provider agency, working out how to support those people to have not just a life outside of an abusive institution, but a real life, a life that was worth living, a life that was full of relationship, was full of opportunity to contribute, which is really, really important. So I basically started doing the LivesthroughFriends work, but LivesthroughFriends didn't exist. 5 weeks after I retired in 2006. That's when the phone started. By then the phone and the emails and the rest of it were happening. By 2008, Colin and I had decided that we needed an agency to do what we were doing. And that's when LivesthroughFriends happened. And basically, Colin and I just responded to what we could personally manage for, until about 2018. So that's 10 years where we just did bits and pieces. Well, it was more than bits and pieces, but one of the benefits for us was at least I had a pension. We had to find a bit more income for Colin, but I had an NHS pension, so I didn't necessarily need to earn very much for what we were doing, and we were able to offer our services very, very cheaply when you compare to what consultants normally are charging. And we were able to create basically a narrative about how to do this stuff from experience. We were battling the system all the way through. John Seddon, who we also lean on heavily to understand what's happening in our world, described us as the agency that seemed to get things done against the grain continually. In around 2018, Colin got sick and was very ill. And when he recovered to a large extent, decided that he really had to retire. And at that point, we had acquired, because we are a community interest company, we'd acquired a bank of of non-executive directors, people who were either fellow travellers in professional terms, or they were families that we'd helped. And so I went to them and said, look, I'm getting on as well. And what are we going to do with this organisation? Colin and I have run it and done the work. We'd called on friends and associates repeatedly over those years, but essentially it was two of us that were the organisation. And their response was, well, this can't disappear. Nobody else is doing this stuff, which is about trying to help public authorities navigate their rules to do the right thing, or in many cases, and we're now very explicit about it, break their rules in order to do the right thing, and work with us actually to change the system that gets in the way.